The boy knew his father was waiting outside. He simply refused to open the door. The hallway outside the principal's office smelled faintly of floor polish and old books. Afternoon sunlight stretched across the polished tiles of Maple Creek Elementary School, painting long golden rectangles that slowly shifted with the passing hours. Ryan Mitchell sat alone in a hard wooden chair positioned against the wall. The chair was uncomfortable. It had been uncomfortable during the first hour. It was even worse now. But he never moved. In his lap rested a small gift box wrapped in blue paper. The corners had become slightly bent from being held too tightly. 5 hours earlier, he had arrived carrying hope. Now he carried something much heavier. Across the hallway hung colorful student artwork. Hand-painted autumn leaves, construction paper pumpkins, and handwritten essays about family covered the walls. Ryan found himself staring at one drawing longer than the others. It showed a mother and child standing together beneath a bright yellow sun. There was no father in the picture. His chest tightened. Somewhere beyond the closed office door sat a 10-year-old boy named Noah Parker. His son, a son he had never truly known. Ryan glanced toward the clock mounted above the secretary's desk. 3:27. He had arrived shortly after 10 o'clock that morning. The principal had offered coffee twice. The school counselor had tried making conversation. A secretary had quietly suggested he come back another day. Ryan had politely declined every offer. He stayed exactly where he was, waiting, because for the first time in a decade, leaving felt impossible. The office door opened briefly. Ryan immediately looked up, his expression filled with hope so quickly it almost hurt to watch. But it was only a teacher carrying paperwork. The door closed again. The hope disappeared from his face just as quickly. The teacher offered him a sympathetic smile before walking away. Ryan looked down at the unopened gift box resting in his hands. Inside was a baseball glove. Nothing extravagant. Nothing designed to buy affection. During the past several months, he had learned Noah loved baseball. The information came from social media posts, school newsletters, and fragments of conversations with people who actually knew the boy. Ryan hated how little he knew. His favorite color. His favorite subject. His favorite team. Details a father should know without effort. Details Ryan had spent 10 years missing. The sound of children laughing drifted through the hallway from somewhere outside. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. He imagined Noah among them. Taller now. Older. Not the infant he once pictured during sleepless nights. Not the toddler he occasionally wondered about before pushing the guilt aside. A real person. A boy with opinions, memories, and questions. Questions Ryan was not sure he could answer. At the far end of the hallway, Principal Harris emerged from her office carrying a folder. She was a kind woman in her 50s who had spent most of the day navigating one of the most uncomfortable situations of her career. She approached slowly. "He still does not want to come out." Ryan nodded. He had expected that answer, yet hearing it still hurt. "Did he say anything?" Principal Harris hesitated. "Only that he knows you are here." Ryan swallowed hard. "And?" She offered a gentle smile. "And he asked if you were still waiting." For the first time all afternoon, something shifted inside Ryan. Not much, just enough to keep him sitting there. "What did you tell him?" he asked quietly. "I told him the truth." She glanced at the chair. "You have not moved." Ryan looked down at the gift box. "I do not plan to." Principal Harris studied him for a moment. Then she nodded and returned to her office. Silence settled once more. Outside, the school day gradually faded into evening. Parents arrived to pick up children. School buses departed. Teachers gathered their belongings and headed home. The hallway grew quieter with each passing minute. Yet Ryan remained exactly where he was. As the shadows lengthened, his thoughts drifted backward. Back before the empty years. Before regret became a permanent companion. Before fear disguised itself as freedom. Back to a small apartment 11 years earlier where a woman named Emily Parker had stood in a doorway with tears in her eyes and one hand resting on her pregnant stomach. Ryan squeezed the gift box tighter. Some memories never stopped hurting. The office door remained closed. The boy remained inside. And for the first time in 11 years, Ryan Mitchell understood exactly what waiting felt like. The hallway outside the principal's office had grown quieter by the minute. The final school bus had already disappeared beyond the parking lot, leaving behind only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional sound of a closing classroom door. Ryan Mitchell remained seated in the same wooden chair, his shoulders stiff, the blue gift box still resting in his lap. The clock now read 4:18. More than 6 hours had passed since he first arrived. Yet somewhere beyond that office door, Noah Parker still refused to see him. Ryan lowered his eyes and stared at the scuffed floor tiles beneath his shoes. For years he had convinced himself there would be time. Time to explain. Time to apologize. Time to fix what he had broken. Sitting alone in that empty hallway, he finally understood how dangerous that lie had been. Time never waits. It simply leaves. 11 years earlier, Ryan had believed he was escaping a problem. He had been 31 years old and terrified. Emily Parker was 7 months pregnant. Their apartment was small. Bills arrived faster than paychecks. Every conversation seemed to revolve around diapers, medical appointments, and responsibilities he felt completely unprepared to carry. Emily had been hopeful. Ryan had been frightened. The difference between them slowly became impossible to ignore. He still remembered that rainy Thursday evening. Emily stood in the kitchen wearing one of his oversized sweatshirts. One hand rested protectively on her growing stomach while she organized paperwork from a prenatal appointment. The apartment smelled faintly of tomato soup and laundry detergent. It should have felt like home. Instead, Ryan felt trapped. "We will figure it out," Emily had said softly when she noticed his silence. "People do this every day." Ryan remembered looking away. "What if I am not ready?" Emily offered a tired smile. "Nobody is ready." She thought she was reassuring him. Instead, the words only deepened his panic. Looking back now, Ryan could not identify the exact moment fear became selfishness. He only knew that over the following weeks he began pulling away. He worked longer hours, answered fewer calls, avoided conversations about the future. Emily noticed everything but rarely complained. She continued preparing the nursery corner in their bedroom, continued reading parenting books, continued believing they were a team. Ryan hated himself for how much easier it became to stay silent. Then came the night that changed everything. Emily had spent the evening assembling a small white crib purchased secondhand from a local family. Ryan arrived home late. She greeted him with a smile despite her obvious exhaustion. The crib stood near the bedroom window, waiting to be finished. Emily held up a tiny blue blanket she had found on sale. "Do you think you will like this?" she asked. Ryan remembered staring at the blanket, then at the crib, then at her stomach. Suddenly, everything felt too real, too permanent, too overwhelming. "I cannot do this," he heard himself say. Emily laughed nervously. "You mean build the crib?" "No." The smile disappeared from her face. Silence filled the room. Ryan still remembered the expression in her eyes when she finally understood. Not anger, not hatred, something worse. Disappointment. "Ryan," she whispered. "What are you saying?" He could not look at her. "I need time." Emily's voice trembled. "We do not have time." But he left anyway. Not because he stopped loving her. Not because another woman existed. Not because of some dramatic betrayal. He left because he was afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of responsibility. Afraid of becoming someone's father. The irony haunted him now. In trying to avoid failure, he had created the very thing he feared most. The memory faded as the principal's office door opened once again. Ryan immediately sat straighter. Principal Harris stepped into the hallway carrying a stack of folders. Her expression softened when she saw him still waiting. "You are still here." Ryan managed a weak smile. "I said I would be." She hesitated before speaking. Noah asked another question. Ryan's heart immediately quickened. What did he ask? Principal Harris looked toward the closed office door. "He wanted to know why you never came before." The words struck harder than Ryan expected. He stared at the floor for several seconds. There was no easy answer. No explanation capable of repairing 11 missing years. Finally, he looked up. "What did you tell him?" Principal Harris offered a sad smile. "I told him that was a question only you could answer." Then she turned and walked back into the office. The door closed softly behind her. Ryan remained alone in the hallway once more. But for the first time all day, he realized something important. Noah was still asking questions. And sometimes questions were the first sign that a locked door might not stay closed forever. The clock above the secretary's desk clicked softly as the minute hand moved forward once again. 4:39. The hallway had become almost completely silent now. Most of the classroom lights were off. The custodial staff had begun their evening rounds. Outside the tall windows near the entrance, the autumn sky was slowly fading from gold to deep blue. Ryan Mitchell remained in the same chair. The blue gift box sat unopened in his lap. His back ached. His stomach was empty. None of it mattered. Every minute he stayed felt like a debt he should have started paying years ago. The principal's office door remained closed. Beyond it sat a boy who knew exactly who Ryan was. That knowledge alone felt strange. For years, Ryan had imagined what this moment might look like. He pictured excitement, curiosity, maybe even anger. He never imagined silence. Yet the silence somehow felt deserved. 11 years earlier, after walking out of the apartment he shared with Emily Parker, Ryan convinced himself the separation was temporary. He told himself he needed space. Time to think. Time to mature. Time to become someone capable of being a father. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Every phone call he avoided became easier to avoid. Every unanswered message created more distance. Eventually, the shame grew so large that returning felt impossible. So he stayed away. At first, he followed Emily's life from a distance. A mutual friend occasionally mentioned her. Ryan learned she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. He learned she named him Noah. He learned she moved into a small rental house near her parents. Every update brought relief that they were surviving and guilt that he was not helping. Then the updates became less frequent. Life continued moving. Careers changed. Cities changed. Relationships came and went. Yet every year carried the same quiet reminder. Somewhere a little boy was growing up without him. Ryan missed Noah's first birthday. He missed his first Christmas. He missed his first steps. His first words. His first day of kindergarten. Every milestone passed without him. Looking back now, Ryan could barely understand how he allowed so much time to disappear. The answer was painfully simple. Regret becomes heavier every year. The longer he waited, the harder it became to return. Then one evening 6 months earlier, everything changed. Ryan had been attending a charity baseball tournament organized by a client. Children from several local schools participated. It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday. Then he noticed a photograph displayed on a volunteer information board. A smiling 10-year-old boy stood proudly beside a baseball field holding a trophy. The caption underneath read, "Noah Parker, Outstanding Sportsmanship Award." Ryan remembered staring at the picture for several seconds. The boy had Emily's eyes. The same bright blue. The same thoughtful expression. Something inside Ryan shifted. For the first time, Noah was no longer an abstract idea. He was real. A child. His child. That night Ryan barely slept. The following week he hired a family mediator, then a counselor, then spent months trying to determine the least harmful way to approach the situation. Emily initially refused every request. Ryan could not blame her. He deserved that. But eventually she agreed to a conversation. He still remembered seeing her for the first time in more than a decade. The years had changed both of them. Yet Emily remained unmistakably herself. Calm, strong, honest. They met in a quiet coffee shop on a rainy afternoon. Ryan apologized. Emily listened. He explained. Emily listened. He admitted he had been afraid. Emily listened. When he finished speaking, she looked out the window for a long moment. "You missed 11 years," she said quietly. Ryan nodded. "I know." Emily's eyes glistened slightly. "No, you really do not." The words followed him for weeks afterward. Because she was right. He knew what he had lost. But he could never fully understand what she had carried alone. The sound of a door opening pulled Ryan back to the present. He immediately looked up. Principal Harris stepped into the hallway once more. This time her expression seemed different. Thoughtful. Careful. She approached slowly. He asked another question. Ryan stood for the first time in nearly 7 hours. His heart pounded. What did he ask? Principal Harris folded her hands together. He wanted to know if you were still holding the gift. Ryan looked down at the blue package. The wrapping paper had become wrinkled around the edges. "I am." Principal Harris nodded. Then she offered a faint smile. "He also wanted to know why you chose today." Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out immediately. Because the truth was embarrassingly simple. He should have come years ago. Finally, he looked toward the closed office door and answered softly, knowing Noah might hear through the other side. "Because I finally ran out of excuses." Silence followed. Then, for the first time all evening, Ryan heard something unexpected from inside the office. A chair moved. Small, faint, but unmistakable. And suddenly the closed door no longer felt quite as impossible as it had that morning. The sound was small, barely more than the scrape of a chair against the floor. Yet to Ryan Mitchell, it felt louder than anything he had heard all day. He stood motionless in the quiet hallway, his eyes fixed on the closed office door. The building had grown almost completely empty. Most teachers had gone home. The evening custodian pushed a cart somewhere in the distance. Outside, the parking lot sat beneath the soft glow of streetlights. The school day was long over, but Ryan remained exactly where he belonged, waiting. Principal Harris disappeared back into her office, leaving him alone once again with his thoughts. For the first time since arriving, however, something felt different. Noah was still behind that door, still refusing to come out, but he was listening. The realization brought an unfamiliar mixture of hope and fear. Ryan sat back down slowly. His knees felt weak from standing too quickly. The blue gift box rested on his lap, as always. He stared at it for a long moment before carefully running his thumb across the slightly wrinkled wrapping paper. 11 years. The number haunted him. 11 birthdays. 11 Christmas mornings. 11 first days of school. He could never stop counting them. During the years he stayed away, Ryan often imagined what Noah's childhood might look like. Sometimes he pictured baseball games. Sometimes school plays. Sometimes family dinners around a small kitchen table. The details changed depending on the year. One thing never changed. Emily was always there. In every imagined memory, she stood somewhere in the background making everything work. Ryan remembered the first photograph he ever saw of Noah after the separation. The image came through an old mutual friend nearly 9 years ago. Noah could not have been older than 2. He sat on a playground swing wearing a tiny baseball cap several sizes too large. Emily stood behind him smiling. Ryan had stared at that photograph for nearly an hour. Not because of Noah, because of Emily. She looked tired. Her smile was genuine, but exhaustion lived behind it. He remembered realizing that every difficult day she experienced had been a day he should have shared. Every challenge she faced had been one he helped create. The guilt never disappeared after that. It simply became part of him. The office door opened unexpectedly. Ryan immediately stood. His heart jumped before he could stop it. This time, Principal Harris stepped into the hallway carrying 2 paper cups. She handed one to Ryan. Coffee. Ryan accepted it with a grateful nod. Thank you. Principal Harris sat briefly in a chair across from him. The quiet stretched between them for several seconds. Finally, she spoke. Emily told me a little about what happened. Ryan lowered his eyes. I imagine she was generous. Principal Harris smiled sadly. Actually, she was remarkably fair. That answer somehow hurt more. Ryan wrapped both hands around the warm cup. That sounds like Emily. Principal Harris nodded. She never said a bad word about you in front of Noah. Ryan looked up immediately. What? She protected him. The principal glanced toward the closed office door. She told him the truth when he got older. But she never filled his head with anger. Ryan felt his throat tighten. He looked away toward the empty hallway. Of course Emily had done that. Even after everything, she chose kindness over bitterness. Principal Harris stood and adjusted the folder beneath her arm. You should know something. Ryan looked back at her. Noah is not afraid of you. Then why will he not come out? The principal considered the question carefully. Because he is protecting his mother. The answer landed heavily. Ryan stared at the floor. Suddenly so many things made sense. Noah did not know him. He owed him nothing. The only parent who had ever shown up was Emily. The only person who had stayed was Emily. Loyalty was not the problem. Loyalty was the reason. Principal Harris smiled gently before returning to her office. Once again the door closed. Once again Ryan was alone. But now he understood something he had not understood before. This was not about forgiveness. Not yet. It was about trust. And trust could not be demanded. It had to be earned. Minute by minute. Choice by choice. Year by year. The clock above the secretary's desk now showed 5:12. Darkness had settled fully outside. Ryan glanced toward the front entrance. He could leave. Nobody would blame him. He had already waited longer than anyone expected. Yet the thought never seriously crossed his mind. He had spent 11 years walking away from difficult things. Tonight would be different. Suddenly, a small shadow appeared beneath the office door. Ryan froze. His heartbeat quickened. The shadow remained there for several seconds. Motionless. Someone stood on the other side. Listening. Watching through the narrow glass panel. Ryan did not move. He did not approach. He did not speak. He simply sat there holding the gift box in his lap. A full minute passed. Then another. Finally, a small folded piece of paper slid slowly beneath the door and stopped on the hallway floor between them. The shadow disappeared immediately afterward. Ryan stared at the paper. His hands trembled slightly as he bent down and picked it up. 3 words were written in careful 10-year-old handwriting. One simple question. Why now, Dad? Ryan stared at the folded piece of paper in his hands as though it contained the weight of an entire decade. 3 simple words. Why now, Dad? The final word affected him more than he expected. Dad. Noah could have written Ryan. He could have written Mr. Mitchell. He could have written nothing at all. Yet despite everything, he had written Dad. Ryan lowered himself back into the chair and read the question again. The hallway remained silent around him. The office door stayed closed. Somewhere on the other side, a 10-year-old boy was waiting for an answer. For years, Ryan had imagined having a chance to explain himself. He used to rehearse speeches while driving alone at night. He pictured dramatic conversations and perfect apologies. Now that the moment had finally arrived, every prepared answer felt useless. The truth was not complicated. It was simply ugly. Ryan searched his pockets until he found a pen. The secretary had left it on her desk hours earlier. He turned the paper over and stared at the blank side. His hand hesitated. Then he began writing slowly. Because I was afraid. He stopped. The words looked painfully small. He continued. I told myself I needed time. Then I told myself it had been too long. Then I told myself you were probably better without me. The excuses changed every year. The truth never did. I was afraid. Ryan read what he had written. It was not enough, but it was honest. He folded the paper carefully and walked toward the office door. His heart pounded with every step. Kneeling beside the door, he slid the note underneath. Then he returned to his chair and waited. Minutes passed. The clock reached 5:23. Outside, darkness settled completely over the parking lot. The school felt almost abandoned. Finally, the paper slid back beneath the door. Ryan immediately picked it up. New handwriting appeared beneath his own words. My mom was afraid too. She still stayed. Ryan closed his eyes. The words struck with astonishing force. Not because they were cruel, because they were true. Emily had been afraid. Of course she had been. She had been 28 years old, pregnant, and suddenly alone. Yet she stayed. She faced every difficult day he had avoided, every sleepless night, every doctor's appointment, every school registration form, every fever, every scraped knee, every parent-teacher conference. Ryan looked toward the closed door and realized something important. Noah was not speaking like a child. He was speaking like someone who had spent years watching courage up close. Emily had taught him that. Another memory surfaced unexpectedly. About 3 months after Noah was born, Ryan had parked across the street from Emily's rental house. He never told anyone about it, not even Emily. He sat inside his car for nearly an hour. Through the front window, he saw her carrying a baby through the living room. She looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back carelessly. Laundry sat folded on a nearby chair. The house looked ordinary. Small. Imperfect. Real. Ryan remembered gripping the steering wheel and telling himself he would walk across the street. He would knock on the door. He would apologize. He would finally do the right thing. Instead, he drove away. The memory still made him sick. A soft sound interrupted his thoughts. Another note appeared beneath the door. Ryan picked it up immediately. This one contained only a single question. Did you ever think about me? Ryan laughed once. A sad, broken sound. Then he reached for the pen again. Every day, he wrote. I just did not have the courage to become the person you deserved. He slid the paper back beneath the door. This time the response came faster. So you thought about me for 10 years, but never came? Ryan leaned back against the wall and looked up at the ceiling. There was no defense against that question. No clever explanation. No way to make it sound better. Because Noah had identified the real problem. Ryan had not disappeared because he stopped caring. He disappeared because caring was not enough. Showing up mattered. Emily showed up. Ryan did not. He wrote only 4 words in response. You deserved better than that. Silence followed. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. Ryan began wondering whether the conversation had ended. Then, slowly, the office door handle moved. The sound was almost imperceptible. Yet Ryan heard it immediately. His breath caught. The handle stopped halfway. The door opened only an inch. A narrow strip of light spilled into the hallway. Ryan remained perfectly still. He did not approach. He did not speak. Through the small opening, he could see part of a baseball shoe resting on the floor inside the office. For the first time all day, there was no wall of silence between them. There was only a partially open door. And sometimes, after 11 years of distance, an inch was enough to feel like hope. The narrow opening in the office door remained unchanged for several long seconds. A thin strip of warm light stretched across the hallway floor. Ryan Mitchell sat perfectly still, afraid that even the smallest movement might cause the door to close again. Through the opening, he could see only part of a baseball shoe and the edge of a chair. Nothing more. Yet somehow it felt like the most progress he had made in 11 years. The school was nearly empty now. The secretary had gone home. Principal Harris remained in her office, giving them privacy. The distant hum of the heating system echoed softly through the building. Ryan glanced at the clock. 5:48. He had stopped caring how long he had been there. Time felt different now. Every minute seemed to carry meaning. Slowly, another folded note slid beneath the door. Ryan picked it up immediately. The handwriting was the same careful print. "Did Mom know you were coming today?" Ryan stared at the question. His thoughts immediately drifted to Emily. 3 days earlier, they had met in a quiet diner on the edge of town. Rain tapped gently against the windows while coffee cooled between them. Emily looked older than the woman he remembered, but not in a sad way. Life had added strength to her. Confidence. The kind earned through surviving difficult years. Ryan had spent most of that meeting apologizing. Emily had spent most of it listening. Finally, she asked the only question that truly mattered. Why now? At the time, Ryan struggled to answer. Not because he lacked reasons. Because none of them sounded good enough. He eventually told her about the baseball tournament. About seeing Noah's photograph. About realizing he could no longer spend the rest of his life wondering what kind of person his son had become. Emily listened quietly. Then she wrapped both hands around her coffee cup and looked out the window. "If Noah wants to meet you, I will not stop him," she said. "But that decision belongs to him." Ryan never forgot those words. Even now, sitting outside the office, he understood how much trust Emily had placed in Noah. She never tried to make the decision for him. Ryan took the pen and wrote carefully. "Yes, I spoke to her first. She said the choice was yours." He slid the note back beneath the door. A minute passed. Then another. Finally, a response appeared. "Is she still mad at you?" Ryan almost smiled despite the ache in his chest. It sounded like exactly the kind of question a 10-year-old would ask. Honest, direct, impossible to avoid. Ryan thought carefully before writing. "I do not know. I think she was hurt for a very long time." He paused, then added another sentence. "I would have been too." The paper disappeared beneath the door once more. Ryan leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes briefly. He wondered what Noah looked like right now. Whether he resembled Emily more or him. Whether he smiled easily. Whether he laughed loudly. Whether he ever wondered about the father who vanished. A sudden memory surfaced. Years ago, shortly after Noah turned 6, Ryan had received an envelope from an old mutual friend. Inside was a photograph taken at a youth baseball game. Noah stood proudly on a dusty field holding a glove nearly as large as his arm. Several other children smiled beside him. Emily stood in the background holding a folding chair and a water bottle. Ryan remembered staring at that picture for hours. Not because he planned to return. Not because he was ready. Because it was proof that life continued without him. Noah learned to throw a baseball without him. Learned to ride a bicycle without him. Learned to read, laugh, dream, and grow without him. The realization had felt unbearable then. It felt worse now. The sound of the door handle interrupted his thoughts. Ryan opened his eyes. This time the door moved farther. Not much. Maybe 6 inches. Enough to reveal a small section of the office beyond. Enough to reveal the edge of a desk and part of a bookshelf. Ryan remained seated. He remembered what Emily once told him during their diner conversation. If Noah gives you an inch, do not demand a mile. So he stayed exactly where he was. Another note appeared. Ryan unfolded it carefully. The words were shorter this time. More personal. "Did you ever keep anything from when I was a baby?" Ryan swallowed hard. For several moments, he simply stared at the question. Then he reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Inside was a worn photograph he had carried for nearly a decade. The only picture he owned of Noah as an infant. The edges were faded from being handled too often. Ryan looked at it for a moment before placing it gently on the floor. Without a word, he slid the photograph through the opening beneath the door. Silence followed. Then he heard something he had not heard all day. A small intake of breath from the other side. And for the first time since arriving at the school, Ryan realized Noah was no longer talking to a stranger. He was talking to the man whose face appeared nowhere in his childhood memories, yet somehow had carried a picture of him for 10 years. Ryan remained motionless as silence settled over the hallway once again. The faded photograph was gone now, resting somewhere on the other side of the partially opened door. For several minutes, there was no sound at all. No notes sliding across the floor. No questions. No movement. Ryan found himself staring at the narrow opening, wondering what Noah was thinking as he studied the picture. The photograph had been taken when Noah was only a few months old. A mutual friend had mailed Ryan a copy years ago without telling Emily. It showed a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket, sleeping peacefully in Emily's arms. Ryan had carried that picture through 3 different apartments, 2 different cities, and countless sleepless nights. It was the closest thing he had to a memory. Finally, another note appeared beneath the door. Ryan picked it up carefully. The handwriting seemed slightly less guarded this time. "Why did you keep it?" Ryan read the question twice. Then a third time. The answer came easier than he expected. "Because it was all I had." He paused before adding more. "Every year I thought about throwing it away because it reminded me of what I lost. Every year I put it back in my wallet." He slid the note through the opening and waited. The response came quickly. "You lost it." Ryan stared at the words. A sad smile touched his face. Children had a way of finding the truth hidden inside adult language. He picked up the pen again. "No, I gave it away. There is a difference." For the first time that evening, the note did not immediately return. Ryan leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. Somewhere inside the office, Noah was processing answers that no 10-year-old should ever have needed to ask for. Yet Ryan admired him. The boy was not angry for the sake of being angry. He was searching for understanding. Emily had raised him well. The thought brought another memory rushing back. Nearly 8 years earlier, Ryan had been walking through a shopping center during the holiday season. Families crowded the stores. Children carried bags of gifts while parents followed behind. Near the food court, he noticed a little boy sitting on Santa's lap. For a split second, Ryan thought it was Noah. His heart nearly stopped. He stood there staring until he realized it was another child entirely. Yet the feeling stayed with him all day. That night he sat alone in his apartment and wondered what Noah had asked Santa for that year. A bicycle? A baseball glove? A video game? The questions seemed small, but they haunted him because he would never know the answers. Another sound interrupted his thoughts. The door opened a little wider. This time, nearly a foot. Ryan kept his eyes lowered. He did not want Noah to feel cornered. The trust between them was still fragile. Then a different object appeared beneath the door. Not a note. A folded piece of construction paper. Ryan picked it up carefully and unfolded it. It was a school assignment. Across the top, written in a child's handwriting, were the words "My hero." Beneath them was a photograph of Emily Parker. Ryan felt his throat tighten immediately. Noah had written several paragraphs about his mother. He described how she worked hard, attended every baseball game, helped with homework, and never forgot important promises. The final sentence was underlined in pencil. "She always stays." Ryan sat there for a long moment staring at those 3 words. Then he looked toward the partially open door. "She does," he said softly. His voice barely rose above a whisper. She always did. The hallway remained quiet. Yet for the first time, Ryan heard a voice from inside the room. Small, young, careful. "You read it." Ryan froze. He had imagined hearing Noah's voice for months. Nothing prepared him for the reality. "Yes," he answered gently. "I did." Silence followed. Then the voice spoke again. "That was 2nd grade." Ryan smiled despite the tears threatening to appear. "It is really good." Another pause. "I got an A." Ryan laughed softly. "I am not surprised." The conversation ended almost as quickly as it began. Yet everything had changed. The notes were gone. The distance felt smaller. A real voice now existed where silence once lived. Ryan looked down at the blue gift box resting beside his chair. Then he heard Noah again. "Is that really for me?" Ryan glanced at the package. "Yes." "What is it?" Ryan considered telling him. Instead he smiled. "Something I hoped we could use together someday." The hallway fell silent once more. Then came a response Ryan would remember for the rest of his life. "You should not buy things for people you do not know." Ryan lowered his eyes. The wisdom in the statement felt far beyond 10 years old. "You are right," he admitted. Another pause followed. Then the office door slowly opened a few inches wider, and for the first time, Ryan caught a glimpse of bright blue eyes watching him from the other side. For a moment, neither of them moved. The hallway seemed to disappear. The old school building, the fading evening light, the distant hum of the heating system all faded into the background. Ryan Mitchell stared at the bright blue eyes peeking through the partially open door. Eyes so much like Emily's that his chest tightened instantly. 11 years of distance had been reduced to a gap of only a few inches. Noah Parker remained mostly hidden behind the door. Ryan could see part of his face now, a section of his brown hair, and the cautious expression of a boy trying to decide whether someone deserved a chance. Ryan did not stand. He did not move closer. He simply remained seated. "Hi, Noah," he said softly. The boy studied him carefully. "Hi." The response was polite. Nothing more. Yet Ryan felt grateful for even that. Several seconds passed. Noah's gaze shifted toward the blue gift box. Then back to Ryan. "You really sat there all day?" Ryan nodded. "Yes." Noah frowned slightly. "That seems kind of dumb." Ryan laughed quietly. It probably was. The answer appeared to surprise Noah. Children expected adults to defend themselves. Ryan did not. Another silence followed. Then Noah opened the door a little wider and stepped partially into the hallway. He wore jeans, a baseball sweatshirt, and sneakers that looked heavily used from countless afternoons on the field. He was taller than Ryan expected. Older somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. Ryan wondered how much of that came from growing up faster than most children. Noah leaned against the doorframe. "Mom said you used to tell jokes." Ryan smiled. "Some of them were terrible." "She said that too." For the first time, Noah's mouth twitched slightly. Not quite a smile. "Close enough." Ryan looked down at the gift box. "Can I tell you something?" Noah shrugged. "Maybe." Ryan took a slow breath. "I was scared to come today." Noah immediately looked skeptical. "You are a grown-up. That does not stop people from being scared." The boy considered that answer carefully. Then he nodded once. "I guess." Another quiet moment passed between them. Ryan noticed how often Noah listened before speaking. Emily must have taught him that. Emily had always listened first. Ryan felt another wave of guilt. Even now, he kept discovering pieces of her inside their son. Pieces he never earned the right to witness. Noah glanced toward the office behind him. "Principal Harris said you wanted to know me." "I do." "Why?" The question was simple. Honest. Ryan appreciated that about him already. He looked down at his hands before answering. "Because I should have wanted to know you from the beginning." Noah's eyes never left him. "That is not really an answer." Ryan smiled sadly. "You are right." The boy crossed his arms. Waiting. Ryan took another breath. "I spent a long time pretending I could fix things later." He looked directly at Noah. "One day, I realized later had turned into 10 years. Noah absorbed the words quietly. Then he asked, "Did you forget about me?" Ryan answered immediately. "Never." The speed of the answer seemed to catch Noah off guard. Ryan continued. "Not one birthday. Not one Christmas. Not one year." Noah looked away for the first time. His eyes drifted toward the darkened windows at the end of the hallway. "Then why did you stay gone?" The question landed harder than any other. Because it was the one that mattered most. Ryan could have blamed circumstances. Money. Fear. Mistakes. Time. None of it would have been completely false. None of it would have been completely true. "Because I kept making the wrong choice," Ryan finally said. Noah looked back at him. Ryan continued. "Every year I told myself I would come back next year. Then next year became another year." The hallway fell silent once again. Noah seemed to be measuring every word, weighing them carefully. Then he asked something unexpected. "Do you know what my first baseball team was called?" Ryan felt his heart sink. He already knew the answer. "No," Noah nodded slowly. "The Tigers." Another pause. "Do you know what position I play?" Ryan lowered his eyes. "No, shortstop." The words were not angry. That somehow made them hurt more. Noah was not trying to punish him. He was simply showing him reality. A reality built from years Ryan never shared. The boy looked toward the photograph still resting on the floor inside the office. "Mom knows all of that stuff." Ryan nodded. "I know." Noah's expression softened slightly. "She never missed a game." The sentence echoed through the hallway. Ryan swallowed hard. "I believe that." Noah stared at him for several seconds. Then he surprised Ryan again. "She almost did once." Ryan looked up. "What happened?" A small smile appeared. "She had the flu." His expression warmed. "She still came." Ryan laughed softly through the ache in his chest. "Of course she did." That sounded exactly like Emily. Noah looked at him carefully. Then he asked one final question before stepping back toward the office. "If I tell you something important, will you actually show up this time?" Ryan felt emotion rise so suddenly he could barely speak. Yet he answered without hesitation. "Yes." Noah studied his face for several long seconds. Then, for the first time all evening, he opened the office door completely. The office door stood completely open now, not wide enough to erase 11 years of distance, but wide enough to change everything. Ryan Mitchell remained seated for a moment, almost afraid to believe what had happened. Across the room, Noah Parker stood near a desk with his hands tucked into the pockets of his sweatshirt. The office lights cast a warm glow across the room, softening the sharp edges of the long day. For the first time, father and son occupied the same space without a wall between them. Neither knew exactly what to do next. Noah looked younger standing there than he had through the doorway, not because he seemed less mature, because Ryan could finally see the child behind the courage. The baseball shoes, the slightly messy hair, the nervous shifting of his weight from one foot to the other. Ryan suddenly felt the full weight of every year he had missed. Principal Harris quietly gathered a few papers from her desk. She understood this moment did not belong to her. "I am going to check on a few things," she said gently. "Take your time." Neither Ryan nor Noah responded. Both simply nodded. Moments later, the principal stepped into the hallway and closed the outer office door behind her. The room became still. Ryan remained seated where he was. Noah remained standing. Several seconds passed before Noah finally spoke. "You can come in if you want." Ryan smiled softly. "Only if you are sure." Noah shrugged. "I opened the door." The answer carried a quiet honesty that reminded Ryan of Emily. He slowly stood and stepped inside the office. The room felt surprisingly small now. He chose a chair near the entrance rather than one closer to Noah. Trust still needed space. Noah sat across from him, leaving several feet between them. Ryan noticed a baseball glove resting beside Noah's backpack. Well worn, frequently used. The sight immediately drew his attention. Noah followed his gaze. "Coach says I need a new one." Ryan nodded. "That one looks like it has seen a lot of games." Noah glanced down at it and smiled faintly. 3 seasons. The smile disappeared almost immediately, as though he remembered he was supposed to be cautious. Ryan understood. Relationships did not heal in a single conversation, especially not this one. Noah looked toward the blue gift box still sitting in Ryan's chair outside the office. "Is that a glove?" Ryan laughed quietly. "How did you know?" "Because every grown-up buys baseball stuff when they find out I play baseball." Ryan lowered his head. Even that carried a lesson. Noah was used to people making assumptions. "You do not have to take it," Ryan said. Noah nodded. "I know." The answer seemed important somehow. Nobody was forcing him. Nobody was deciding for him. That mattered. Another silence settled between them. This one felt less uncomfortable than the others. Noah eventually leaned forward slightly. "Mom cried after you left." Ryan froze. The words were spoken gently, not accusingly, almost thoughtfully, yet they landed harder than anything else that day. Ryan looked down at his hands. "I know." Noah shook his head. "No, I do not think you do." The statement carried no anger, only honesty. "When I was little, I used to hear her crying sometimes after she thought I was asleep." Ryan closed his eyes briefly. The image broke something inside him. Noah continued quietly. "She always stopped before morning." Ryan swallowed hard. Emily had protected their son, even from her sadness. That sounded exactly like her. "She is stronger than I ever was," Ryan said softly. Noah nodded immediately. "Yeah." There was no hesitation, no debate, just certainty. Ryan actually smiled. "We agree on that." For the first time all evening, Noah smiled too. It was small, brief, but real. The resemblance to Emily nearly took Ryan's breath away. The smile faded as Noah looked toward the dark window. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan nodded. "Anything." Noah took a deep breath. "Were you ever going to come back?" The room grew very quiet. Ryan understood this was not really a question about the past. It was a question about value, about whether Noah had ever mattered enough. Ryan thought carefully before answering. "I wanted to come back hundreds of times." Noah looked down. "But you did not." "No." Ryan refused to hide from the truth. "I did not." Another pause followed. Then Ryan continued. "Wanting to do the right thing is not the same as doing it." Noah slowly lifted his eyes. Ryan held his gaze. "That is the biggest mistake I ever made." Noah seemed to consider the answer. Then he surprised Ryan with a question that felt impossibly mature. "So what happens now?" Ryan looked around the quiet office. At the backpack, the glove, the school papers, the life that had continued without him. Then he looked back at his son. "I think now," he said gently. You decide whether I get a chance to earn being here. Noah stared at him for several long seconds. Then he looked toward the clock on the wall. The hands now pointed past 6 o'clock. Finally, with complete seriousness, the 10-year-old nodded once and said, That sounds fair. The words hung gently in the air between them. That sounds fair. Noah's answer was simple, but Ryan understood the weight behind it. Trust would not be given because of biology. It would not appear because of apologies. It would have to be earned. Slowly, patiently, one choice at a time. For the first time all day, Ryan felt something he had not allowed himself to feel when he arrived at the school. Not confidence, not forgiveness. Possibility. The office remained quiet. Outside, darkness fully covered the town. The parking lot lights cast soft reflections across the windows. Somewhere down the hallway, a custodian wheeled a cleaning cart past an intersection of corridors. The ordinary sounds made the moment feel strangely real. Noah leaned back in his chair. So what are you supposed to do now? Ryan smiled faintly. I think I start by answering your questions. Noah nodded. Okay. He folded his arms and looked surprisingly serious for a 10-year-old. What is my birthday? Ryan immediately answered. September 17th. Noah blinked. You knew that? Ryan nodded. I never forgot it. Noah seemed slightly surprised. What is my middle name? James. Another pause. Favorite baseball team? Ryan hesitated. Noah noticed immediately. See? Ryan laughed softly. I do not know. Noah pointed at him. The Tigers thing was a trick question too. Ryan smiled. I figured that out. For the first time, Noah laughed. It lasted only a second, but hearing it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. The sound reminded Ryan of Emily's laugh years ago. Warm, genuine, unforced. Noah glanced toward the blue gift box outside the office. You can bring it in if you want. Ryan stood slowly and retrieved it. He returned to his chair, but did not hand it over. You do not have to open it. Noah looked at the box. Can I? Ryan nodded. Noah carefully removed the wrinkled paper and opened the lid. Inside rested a high-quality baseball glove. New leather. Rich brown stitching. Noah's eyes widened before he quickly tried hiding the reaction. That is nice, he said, attempting to sound casual. Ryan smiled. I hoped you might like it. Noah lifted the glove carefully and examined it. For a few moments, he looked exactly like a 10-year-old boy. Not a child carrying difficult questions. Just a kid holding something exciting. Then he set it gently beside him. Thank you. The words were quiet but sincere. Ryan nodded. You are welcome. Another silence followed. This one felt easier. Less fragile. Noah eventually looked toward the photograph Ryan had given him earlier. Mom never told me bad things about you. Ryan lowered his eyes. I know. Most people probably would have. Ryan thought about Emily sitting alone with a newborn baby. About the tears Noah mentioned hearing late at night. About years of carrying burdens she never expected. Your mom is better than most people. Noah nodded immediately. Yeah. The certainty made Ryan smile again. Then Noah asked another question. Do you know why I did not come out? Ryan considered the answer carefully. Because you were angry? Noah shook his head. A little. He looked down at the glove. Mostly because I did not want Mom to get hurt again. The honesty struck Ryan deeply. He saw it now. Every question. Every hesitation. Every hour Noah spent behind that door. It was not about revenge. It was protection. The kind of protection children usually receive from parents. Somehow Noah had spent years trying to protect Emily instead. Ryan felt his throat tighten. That was a very brave thing to do. Noah shrugged. She did everything. Ryan nodded. She did. For several moments neither spoke. Then Noah looked directly at him. If you disappear again, I think it would break her heart. Ryan felt those words settle heavily inside him. Not because they were a warning. Because they were true. I know, he said quietly. Noah studied his face. Do you? Ryan nodded. More than you realize. The room grew still again. Then a soft knock sounded on the outer office door. Principal Harris stepped inside. Noah, your mother is here. Immediately both father and son looked toward the doorway. Ryan's heartbeat quickened. Noah stood slowly from his chair. Through the glass panel beyond the office, Ryan could see a familiar figure standing in the hallway. Emily Parker. She wore a light jacket and carried her car keys in one hand. The years had changed many things. Yet somehow she looked exactly as he remembered. Calm, steady, strong. Noah glanced between them. Then something unexpected happened. He picked up the baseball glove and held it against his chest. "You can stay," he said quietly. Ryan looked at him in surprise. Noah shrugged awkwardly. "At least until Mom gets in here." The invitation was small, ordinary, yet after 11 years, it felt enormous. And as Emily stepped into the office and their eyes met for the first time that evening, Ryan realized the hardest conversation of the day might only be beginning. Emily Parker stepped into the office carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had survived years she never expected to face. The room seemed smaller the moment she entered. Ryan Mitchell stood instinctively, unsure whether to smile, speak, or simply stay out of the way. Noah remained beside his chair holding the baseball glove against his chest. For a brief moment, nobody said anything. The silence felt familiar, not uncomfortable, just full of things that did not need to be spoken immediately. Emily's eyes moved first to Noah. "Everything okay?" Noah nodded. "Yeah." The answer came easily. Ryan noticed that. Earlier, Noah had measured every word carefully. Now his response sounded natural. Emily seemed to notice as well. Some of the tension left her shoulders. Then she looked toward Ryan. Their eyes met for only a second before both glanced away. 11 years had a way of filling simple moments with history. Principal Harris quietly appeared at the doorway. "I am locking up in 10 minutes. Emily smiled warmly. "Thank you for staying late." The principal nodded. "I think it was worth it." Then she disappeared once more, leaving the three of them alone. Noah adjusted the glove in his hands. "He got me this." Emily looked at the glove and then at Ryan. A complicated expression crossed her face. Not anger, not approval, something in between. "It is nice," she said. Noah nodded. "It is." Ryan felt oddly relieved by the ordinary exchange. The evening had already carried enough emotional weight. A simple conversation about a baseball glove felt almost miraculous. Emily pulled a chair closer and sat down. "So," she said softly, looking at Noah, "how did it go?" Noah thought about the question for several seconds. "I asked a lot of questions." Ryan laughed quietly. "That is true." Noah glanced at him. "You did okay." The statement was delivered with all the seriousness of a judge announcing a verdict. Emily smiled despite herself. Ryan noticed the smile immediately. It was the first time he had seen it directed anywhere near him in over a decade. Noah sat back down. "He answered everything." Emily looked toward Ryan. "Everything." Ryan nodded. "I tried to." Noah immediately corrected him. "No, you did." The room fell silent again. Ryan had expected anger, suspicion, resistance. He had not expected Noah to defend him, not even in a small way. Emily seemed equally surprised. She looked carefully at her son. "And how do you feel?" Noah looked down at the glove, then toward Ryan, then back at Emily. "I do not know yet." The honesty in the answer made all three adults in the room smile. It was exactly the kind of answer that deserved respect. Emily reached over and squeezed Noah's shoulder gently. "That is fair." Ryan felt his chest tighten slightly. Earlier in the evening, Noah had used those exact words. "That sounds fair." The similarity was impossible to miss. Noah had inherited more than Emily's eyes. He had inherited her way of looking at the world. The realization felt strangely beautiful. Eventually, Emily stood and picked up her keys. "We should get home." Noah nodded, but did not immediately move. Instead, he looked toward Ryan. "Do you live far away?" Ryan shook his head. "About 40 minutes. That is not too bad." "No," another pause. Noah seemed to be thinking. Then he surprised both adults. "I have a game Saturday." Emily blinked. Ryan froze completely. The office became very quiet. Noah stared directly at Ryan. "You said you would show up." Ryan felt emotion rise so suddenly he could barely breathe. Of all the possibilities he imagined during those long hours in the hallway, this had never crossed his mind. Not because he did not hope for it, because he did not believe he had earned it. "What time?" he asked carefully. 10 in the morning. Ryan nodded immediately. "I will be there." Noah studied his face for several seconds, searching for something. Finally, he seemed satisfied. "Okay." Emily looked between them, visibly emotional though she tried not to show it. Ryan understood why. The invitation was not forgiveness. It was not reconciliation. It was something far more fragile. A chance. They walked together toward the hallway. The school felt almost deserted now. Lights had been turned off in most classrooms. The parking lot outside glowed beneath rows of tall lamps. At the front entrance, Noah stopped beside his mother. Ryan remained several feet away. Nobody seemed quite ready for a goodbye. Finally, Noah adjusted the baseball glove beneath his arm. You waited a long time today. Ryan smiled. I did. Noah nodded thoughtfully. 5 hours is a really long time. Ryan laughed softly. It felt longer. Noah looked at him carefully. Then his expression softened. Mom waited longer. The words were not cruel. They were not angry. They were simply true. Ryan lowered his eyes and nodded. I know. Noah stood quietly for a moment. Then he reached for the door handle and pushed it open. Cool evening air drifted into the building. Before stepping outside, he looked back one final time. Do not be late on Saturday. Ryan smiled through the emotion in his chest. I will not. And for the first time in 11 years, he believed himself. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and cool autumn air. Long before sunrise, Ryan Mitchell was already awake. He had slept poorly, not because of anxiety alone, but because every few hours he checked the clock to make certain he would not be late. Noah's final words outside the school echoed repeatedly in his mind. Do not be late on Saturday. To most people, it sounded like a simple request. To Ryan, it felt like a test. The first real test. At 8:30, nearly 90 minutes before the game, Ryan pulled into the parking lot beside Maple Creek Community Field. The complex sat at the edge of town surrounded by rows of maple trees turning shades of gold and red. Children in baseball uniforms ran across the grass carrying equipment bags while parents unfolded lawn chairs near the fences. The smell of fresh-cut grass mixed with the scent of coffee drifting from a small concession stand. It was an ordinary Saturday morning. Yet to Ryan, it felt like one of the most important days of his life. He parked, stepped out of the car, and immediately noticed how early he was. Most of the field remained quiet. A few coaches prepared equipment. Groundskeepers finished dragging the infield dirt. Ryan walked toward the bleachers carrying a cup of coffee he barely touched. He chose a seat near the third base line and waited. This time, however, the waiting felt different. 5 hours in a school hallway had been punishment. This waiting felt like hope. About 30 minutes later, families began arriving in larger numbers. Children laughed. Parents greeted one another. Ryan watched every vehicle entering the parking lot until finally he saw a familiar blue SUV. His heart immediately quickened. Emily stepped out first. Noah followed carrying his equipment bag over one shoulder. For a brief moment, neither noticed Ryan sitting in the bleachers. He observed them quietly. Emily adjusted Noah's cap. Noah rolled his eyes in the exaggerated way only 10-year-olds could manage. Emily laughed and fixed it anyway. The small interaction lasted only seconds. Yet Ryan found himself smiling. He had missed thousands of moments exactly like that. Then Noah looked toward the field and spotted him. Ryan could tell the exact second recognition happened. Noah stopped walking. Emily followed his gaze. Their eyes met across the distance. Ryan stood immediately and offered a small wave. Noah looked at him for a few seconds before lifting his hand in return. It was not dramatic. It was not emotional. It was enough. As game time approached, Ryan remained in the bleachers while Noah joined his teammates. The boy moved naturally among them, laughing and talking with the confidence of someone who belonged. Ryan watched every moment. Not because Noah was the best player on the field, because he was there, real, living a life Ryan had spent years imagining. During warm-ups, Noah glanced toward the bleachers several times. Each time, Ryan was still there. He understood the silent question. Are you staying? The answer remained the same every time. Yes. The game began at exactly 10 o'clock. Ryan cheered when Noah made a routine catch in the second inning. He applauded when Noah reached first base on a clean single. He stood with everyone else when the team scored a run. Nothing extraordinary happened. No dramatic championship moment. No cinematic ending. Just a youth baseball game on a cool Saturday morning. Yet Ryan found himself fighting emotion throughout the entire event. Because every ordinary moment felt extraordinary when you almost missed it forever. During the fifth inning, Noah made a difficult play at shortstop. The crowd clapped loudly. Ryan clapped too. Noah looked toward the bleachers afterward. Their eyes met briefly. For the first time, Noah smiled without hesitation. A real smile. Open. Genuine. Ryan felt something inside him shift. Not because forgiveness had arrived. It had not. But trust had taken a small step forward. After the game ended, players gathered near the dugout while parents congratulated them. Ryan remained where he was, uncertain whether he should approach. Then he saw Noah speaking with Emily. The boy pointed toward the bleachers. Emily looked over and smiled softly. A moment later, Noah jogged across the grass toward him. Ryan stood immediately. "You came," Noah said. Ryan laughed. "I was here before almost everyone." Noah nodded as though he already knew that. Then he looked down at the dirt beneath his shoes. "I saw." The words carried more meaning than they appeared to. Ryan understood. Noah had been watching too, measuring actions instead of promises. Finally, Noah looked back up. "I got 2 hits." Ryan smiled proudly. "I know. And I made that play in the 5th. "You did." Noah grinned. "Coach says I am getting better." Ryan nodded. "I think your coach is right." For several seconds, they simply stood there beneath the bright morning sun. Then Noah glanced toward his mother waiting near the parking lot. "We usually get pancakes after games." Ryan smiled. "That sounds like a good tradition." Noah shifted awkwardly. Then, without looking directly at him, he asked the question Ryan never expected to hear so soon. "Do you want to come?" The question lingered in the cool autumn air between them. "Do you want to come?" For a moment, Ryan Mitchell simply stared at Noah Parker. The noise of families packing equipment, children laughing near the dugout, and parents folding lawn chairs seemed to fade into the background. 11 years earlier, he had walked away from the life standing in front of him. Now a 10-year-old boy was offering him something he had no right to expect. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, a seat at a table. Ryan swallowed carefully. "I would like that," he said softly. Noah nodded as though he had already decided what the answer would be. Then he turned and started walking toward the parking lot. Ryan followed several steps behind. Emily Parker waited beside the blue SUV with her hands tucked into the pockets of a light jacket. When Noah approached, she immediately looked from her son to Ryan. Noah answered the unspoken question before she could ask it. "He is coming." Emily's eyebrows lifted slightly. Then she looked at Ryan. A small smile appeared. "Okay." 20 minutes later, they sat together inside a local diner that had served weekend breakfasts for decades. The smell of coffee, maple syrup, and fresh pancakes filled the air. Families occupied most of the booths. Football played quietly on a television mounted above the counter. It was ordinary, completely ordinary. Ryan had never appreciated ordinary moments until he realized how many he had missed. Noah sat across from him flipping through the menu, even though Emily pointed out that he ordered the same thing every week. "Chocolate chip pancakes," she said. Noah grinned. "They are still good." Ryan smiled. "Sounds like a solid strategy." Noah seemed pleased by the answer. The waitress arrived and took their order. Conversation came slowly at first, then easier. Noah talked about baseball, school, a science project involving model rockets. Emily occasionally filled in details. Ryan listened carefully, not because he was trying to impress anyone, because every fact felt precious. Every story represented a year he could never recover. When the food arrived, Noah immediately reached for the syrup. Emily laughed. Some things never change. Ryan found himself smiling at the exchange. Watching them together explained everything. Emily had built a life. Not a perfect life. A real one. Full of traditions, routines, and memories. She had done it without him. The realization no longer filled him with shame alone. It filled him with admiration. At one point, Noah excused himself to wash his hands. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, silence settled briefly between the two adults. Emily stirred her coffee slowly. Ryan looked down at the table. "Thank you." Emily glanced up. "For what?" "For today." She followed Noah with her eyes as he crossed the diner in the distance. "Today belongs to him." Ryan nodded. "I know." Another pause followed. Then Emily smiled faintly. "You stayed." Ryan laughed softly. "That seems like a low standard." "Not really." Emily's voice remained calm. "You would be surprised how many people never do." Ryan looked at her carefully. Time had softened some wounds, but not erased them. Yet there was no bitterness in her expression. Only honesty. The same honesty that had carried her through 11 difficult years. "I cannot change what happened," Ryan said quietly. Emily nodded. "No, but I would like to do better." She studied him for a moment before answering. "Then do better." No speech. No dramatic declaration. Just 3 simple words. Somehow they meant more than anything else she could have said. Noah returned carrying a handful of extra napkins. The serious conversation disappeared immediately. The rest of breakfast unfolded naturally. They talked about baseball tournaments, school schedules, favorite movies, small things, normal things. The kind of things families discuss every day without realizing how valuable they are. Eventually, the meal ended. Outside, the afternoon sun hung bright above the town. People moved along sidewalks carrying shopping bags and cups of coffee. Life continued exactly as it always had. Noah adjusted the baseball glove beneath his arm as they stood beside the parking lot. The glove works, by the way. Ryan smiled. You already tested it? Noah nodded. During warm-ups. Then he hesitated. It is good. Ryan laughed. High praise. Noah shrugged, pretending not to care. Emily rolled her eyes affectionately. The moment felt so normal that Ryan almost forgot how extraordinary it was. Almost. Before leaving, Noah stepped closer. Next game is in 2 weeks. Ryan looked at him carefully. I will be there. Noah nodded. This time he did not ask whether Ryan would show up. He simply accepted the answer. That small difference meant everything. Emily opened the driver's door. Noah climbed into the passenger seat. As the engine started, he rolled down the window. Hey. Ryan stepped closer. Yeah. Noah held his gaze for a moment. Then he smiled. You were right. Ryan looked confused. About what? Noah glanced down at the glove resting in his lap. The gift. Ryan waited. Noah's smile widened slightly. Maybe people can use things together someday. The window rolled up. The SUV pulled away. Ryan remained standing in the parking lot watching until the vehicle disappeared around the corner. The autumn breeze moved gently through the trees overhead. 11 years earlier, fear had convinced him to walk away. Today, for the first time, he walked forward instead. Not toward a perfect ending. Not toward instant forgiveness. Toward something better. A chance to earn tomorrow. And sometimes, after losing 11 years, a chance was more valuable than anything else in the world.